Welcome to my talk, Factory Honeypot. That's a story about our high interaction honeypot that we've built and we ran over the last 6 months. So again, welcome for coming. So we pitched this project originally in 2017 with the idea based off of news articles that I kept seeing about factories and things being attacked by ransomware and other attacks, and they kept saying that hackers are targeting the auto industry and stealing and demanding money. And so we wanted to know exactly how is this actually happening, specifically to factories or anything like that. So we sat down as a project team and we came up with an idea that we wanted to make a high interaction honeypot that looked realistic, like a factory that would do and make products if we wanted it to. By high interaction honeypot, we're talking about the ability for not only just to receive data, but you can actually go into it. There was a full network and a bunch of other things that made it look very, very realistic. As you can see in this video behind me, this is walking through some of the things that you could do. So we originally started with the equipment. The equipment that we had was a S7, and then we had a Omron, and then we had actually ended up with 2 MicroLogics. Building all this equipment and all that stuff, I had to get out my label maker and make it look nice so we could keep track of what each thing was doing. Our final design that we came up with was what you see on the screen here. We had an industrial cellular router that was on the internet, and you could see that the router itself was a Sierra Wireless. We had an IP address. We had to implement a transparent firewall to keep some of the attackers out that were overly persistent but didn't do what we wanted them to do. There was a D-Link switch and then a bunch of other information, Then that went to the PLCs that we had. We ran a bunch of stuff in virtual machines, and we actually had another laptop that ran as a file server. So we sat down originally, and we were like, all right, let's build logic. We're going to build the logic to make all of this happen. So how did we get there? We sat down and we realized really quickly, without actual equipment, that writing the logic was really, really hard to actually pull off. So we ended up having to design our HMI, and Charles Perrine on our team designed this HMI screen that then we could build the logic for. So as you can see, we were trying to become in our mind, we were going to be a company that's making something with a plastics injection molding process. So as you can see, we have a tank that had product in it with an agitator, that then there was a valve that went to a process heater, a pump to the injector, to a conveyor belt with a optical eye, and then a robotic arm that was for a palletizer. So we learned that we had to have that HMI screen first because we didn't actually have the equipment. So we ended up having to fake a lot of data that we faked within logic itself. So here we have a fluctuating RPM of our conveyor belt, so that when you start it in the video you saw before, and we'll show you again here in a second, it slowly builds up over time, and when you turn it off, it shuts, it slowly ramps itself back down. Because initially, with a lot of honeypots and other things that we've seen that have had logic, it's just on, off, and not a lot of making it super realistic. To do that, we had to do some random number generation. Now, some PLCs will support random number generation. Other PLCs, we had to build it within logic using math functions ourselves. So, depending on the PLC, we did one thing or another. Here's the video of turning it on. As you can see, the conveyor belt slowly starts. If you actually stop just the conveyor belt, it'll slowly take itself back down. If you stop the pump, the PSI will slowly come down as well, so on and so forth. So you kind of get in the picture. We're trying to make this look really, really realistic. That way, if an attacker got into this system, they would think that they were on a real factory. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, there was a couple different parts to this, one of which was the palletizer, and there was a robotics arm. So we had a system that was a robotics workstation. This was initially our first machine that we wanted somebody to compromise to test for lateral movement to an HMI or to one of our other systems. So a lot of the things we're going to talk about when we get to the actual incidents, you'll see that it is based off of the robotics workstation at first. We wanted to take the persona of a company that was accidentally exposed, and so we didn't expose everything to the internet, and we specifically chose some PLC ports and 2 VNC ports. At one point in time, we did have RDP open, but it actually, because of so much scanning, our cellular connection was not very good to attackers at sometimes, and so we kind of stopped that and went just with the classic VNC. So to really build this story up, we really, really wanted to make sure that we had a company that was able, you could find. Well, it's one of the things when you saw the HMI screen, we had the company on there. So we built a company, and the company that we built, we'll go through some of that details. It had 2 locations, one of which was in Chattanooga where I live. It actually made it a little easier for us to do some steps of making sure that the honeypot didn't bleed over into anything else or any other IP spaces that we might have needed. Here's the location in Chattanooga. This is the location in Los Angeles. They're real buildings. They're actually business incubators. It's believable that we could have been there. So there's, again, from the outside of the building, they're legitimate buildings that look like there should be industrial equipment. So if somebody went and took down to that level and wanted to look at it, here we are, this is who we are. We had IP addresses that we had domains for that pointed both to the factory, which was the cellular connection. The VPN was actually an IP address at one of those facilities that we could get access to.